What's good, family? Massive shout out to my doggy boss man, Dougie Free, for boosting up your man the YB merch sales right now. Coming through with that the hot hoodie right now. No, that'll buy 100% confirmed. Wow. So, Canelo just got his wig touched by DMITRY BIVOL, and I can't lie to you. People know me. I'm a huge Canelo fan, but I ain't no one's man fan as such. Why is that relevant? Well, obviously, well, listen, am I glad Canelo lost? No. Am I happy he lost? Possibly. Why? Well, number one, I had coins on the line. You listen, you man know I love coin, 100%. Yeah? But most importantly, for the sport, why is Canelo losing this fight in this way good for the sport? Number one, it shows that you can win a fight on the judges. Listen, Bivol beat Canelo in the best fashion. Yeah, don't forget people, this is the best Canelo as well. Floyd Mayweather fought a Canelo that was nowhere near as good as it is now. This was the best Canelo and someone beat him, essentially, more or less, at his own game. And that's how it should be. Many people, myself included, were worried that Bivol would get the clear win and then get bumped on the scorecard. So that's the first thing I'm glad about. Even though there's an argument, I can't lie to you, when I heard 115, 113, I said no way. Especially given the fact that I saw Canelo jumping on the ropes. Canelo didn't really, he was only fighting the first 30 to 60 seconds. He'd do 30 to 60 seconds when he was fresh, and then he'd just pretty much be a victim for the last 2.5 minutes, or the last minute and a half, 2 minutes, 2 minutes and a half. You can't win a fight by doing 30 seconds at the start, and even then, look at Bivol's face, no marks. He took all the shots on the gloves and arms, A1 defense, A1 cardio. But like I was saying, for me, more than anything, yeah, I'm glad to see that boxing does have some integrity, and it weren't some flat out robbery. Like I said, when Canelo was jumping on the ropes, I thought no way. And when I heard the David Diamante say 115, 113, I said no way. You gotta be joking. Because I thought to myself, if they were gonna rob Bivol, what would they say? They'd say 115, that's the closest you can get. And the fact that they was all unanimous as well, I thought no way. There's no way. And even then, it was still a bit too close for my liking. I think Canelo probably won 4 rounds at the most, if you're being generous. But anyway, the point is here, the reason I'm somewhat glad Canelo lost is because it validates the principles of the sport. A little man shouldn't be able to run up and just start punking all these dudes. And Canelo for me was getting, I mean, look at the odds. The reason I took this bet, yeah, was because the odds was ridiculous. It was 10 to 1. Bivol was 10 to 1, or at the end, at the peak, Bivol was 10 to 1 against. You see my odds here, I got in at 8.5 to 1. There's no way. But that's how gassed people were. And I can't lie to you. You can see I only put 75 quid on. In fact, I actually took money off. I had about 150 quid on, and I thought, oh, my arse started twitching. I started thinking, in fact, no, I had 200 on. I had 200 at lower odds on. I think I had 200 at about 4 to 1 on. And my arse started going. And I thought, oh, I don't want to lose money for the sake of lose. And I took it off. I ended up only putting about, well, you can see what I put on. 70, I think it was about 75 on. I had 75 on for the win. And then I put about 30 quid on for the draw. It was 20, 23 to 1, 24 to 1. But anyway, like I was saying, I'm glad that Canelo's lost to make sure things make sense now. You can't, no matter how good you are, you can't just run up here and have a go on everyone. It just don't make no sense. All that talk about cruiserweight and heavyweight, we know now that's not going to happen, and rightfully so. That's how sport's supposed to be. Well, that's how boxing's supposed to be. You're supposed to dominate the people in your weight division. And let's not forget, Canelo has moved up 2 weight divisions. He went from 154 to 160 to 168. And I think that's what he should focus on now. There's talks about the rematch. I don't think there's any need for it. You've been bettered. You've been topped. And this is the great thing. Canelo took risks. And the odds before the fight didn't give it justice. I said the reason I went in with the coins, gambling, was because this was a 50-50 fight, in all honesty. I said to one of my dons, there's no way this ain't 50-50. Bivol, watch all of his fights, he never takes any damage on his face, which is unheard of. Never, not even a bit of marks. For example, look at Usyk. Usyk gets marked. This guy Bivol don't have no marks, and he's been in there with Canelo, don't take no marks, apart from on his arms. And he said something great tonight. Bivol said, I watched the Callum Smith fight, and I decided going in, I'd rather get my arm battered than my head. And that's what it comes down to. Yeah? And the fact he manned up and he didn't stop punching the whole night. Callum Smith was broken. Callum Smith didn't want to know. And to be fair, Callum Smith didn't have the firepower. And even then, to be fair to Canelo, yeah, even with the firepower of a 175er, Bivol still, when you think about single shot power, Canelo had the edge. From the early rounds, my arse was twitching, because I thought, this guy Canelo had the harder punches. Canelo's technique is probably one of the best techniques in the history of the sport. That's what's enabled him to go up the weights, by the way. Because punch for punch, he was out punching single punches. But like Bivol said, listen, Canelo spends a lot of energy investing in them big single shots, which is great at people his own weight, or just above his own weight at 168. But when you got that extra weight, Bivol didn't ever, like for example, everyone else that Canelo's fought, Callum Smith, Billy Joe, whoever else you want at 168 and 160, apart from Golovkin, everyone else, Canelo touches them and they look like they've seen a ghost. They think, wow, that power. But tonight, and to be fair, even Bivol wasn't being lax with it. Bivol wasn't dropping his hands and sticking his chin out. Bivol was extremely respectful, but the shots weren't turning him off. The shots didn't completely disarm. Bivol didn't go into shock. And that's what the weight and the greatness does. It's not just weight, but part of the reason I put coins on Bivol was because of the Kovalev fight. Kovalev was completely shot to pieces, 38 years old, had half a camp, had just had a war with Anthony Yarde, and he went in there, and really, he was winning that fight. And he was, like I said, he was completely shot to pieces, and he was 38. And he wasn't as good as Bivol. So do a bit of maths there. Kovalev was arguably winning the fight after 10 rounds. Now, Canelo has improved since then, but again, Bivol had all of different parts on his side. Age was on his side. He hasn't been stopped. Kovalev had been in 2 wars. Got stopped by Ward, got moshed by Anthony Yarde, and then had a short camp. But anyway, wow. Canelo took the loss like a champion. I do think Bivol criticised Canelo in as much as, not in a bad way, but he said, listen, Canelo, too much big single shots. He want to load up, and I actually, in my own mind, I thought that was the winning strategy, obviously. We've seen Canelo win by loading up with big heavy shots. And I think at 168, no one is going to take them shots. I said before this fight, what's his name? David Benavidez won't be able to take them shots in my opinion. At 168, Canelo will have a go on Benavidez. Even at 175, if Benavidez was to come up, he ain't no Bivol. He just ain't. We've seen Benavidez go life and death with some next don called Gavril. And I think that's what Canelo needs to go back down. Don't worry about the 175 rematch. I don't see... Canelo was just too big, too strong. That's what this came down to. Too big, too strong. All the things that look good at the lower weights. For example, Canelo's renowned for getting tired in the second half. He got tired again tonight. But even in the fights, he's dominating like the Billy Joe Saunders fight. Pretty much in every fight, yeah, Canelo will start dropping his hands around the halfway mark. Because he's getting tired and running out of gas. Also, them big heavy power shots, the power deteriorates massively towards the end. And you just can't... Bivol's proven that the shots weren't rattling Bivol at the start of the fight. So I don't think Canelo should... Because essentially, to beat Bivol, Canelo would need to either be even better at what he's doing, i.e. get ridiculous power, which he's not going to do, I don't believe. And I don't care how much Canelo trains, unless he gets on a cycle of testosterone. You know what I'm saying? Unless he juices out of his mind, nothing's going to... Canelo has arguably reached his peak. This fight for me shows Canelo's... He's not like... For Canelo to have won tonight, that would have shown that he's still improving. This tonight showed, in my opinion, that he's found his level now. Yeah? And he'll beat, like I said, he'll dominate 168 still, but he's found his level. And I don't think, for his legacy's sake, what's the point letting a man beat you twice? I get it from the ego part. And who knows, maybe Canelo's going to go home. It's easy on the night to say, I want the rematch, and I respect that. I've given Canelo massive props. He's the best fighter in the world in terms of taking risk. I said to one of my dons earlier today, the best thing that ever happened to Canelo was losing to Mayweather. Because it got rid of that whole O business. Too many fighters today, their ass twitches about the O. No one cares about the O. Go in there and challenge yourself, which is something that Canelo does better than anyone. That said, there's nothing wrong as a man accepting, you know what, he's a better guy. That's not my weight division. Because for all we know, Bivol ain't going to get worse. Bivol himself going to get better. And if anything, again, I was saying to one of my dons, Bivol, he could have put his foot down, I feel. Canelo was, I think almost Bivol had Canelo's game plan down pat. Canelo would come out for the first 30 seconds, first 60 seconds, and then not do much for the last 2 minutes. If Bivol, I understand from Bivol's point of view, he didn't want to rock the boat, i.e., you know what, what's the point taking risk and getting caught with a big uppercut, but still, that's the one thing I was worrying about and one thing that Bivol can improve on. If he had I feel like Bivol had more energy left. If he had started putting his foot down, especially when Canelo was looking vulnerable. We haven't seen, even when Canelo fought Golovkin, yeah, he never looked vulnerable. Tonight we saw Canelo genuinely at a gas, on the ropes. I mean, when was the last time we've seen this new Canelo? Don't forget, people. Yes, in the first Golovkin fight we saw Canelo backed up. We haven't seen Canelo backed up since. Yeah, he's always been the one hunting every single round. For example, even in the Golovkin rematch, Canelo categorically changed his strategy. That was where we saw the shift in Canelo. That's when Canelo became a true puncher. Before, when you watch all of his other fights with Cotto and whatever, he'd try and kind of box and punch. Ever since Golovkin 2, he's come out as an out-and-out, I'm going to put 1 or 2 heavy shots on you, and you're going to break. And since then, since Golovkin 2, we haven't seen Canelo on the ropes for any amount of time, until tonight. And tonight, Canelo literally spent half the fight on the ropes. Yeah? That's a sign that you don't need no more of that. Because for all we know, Bivol going to go home and start cooking. And I can see it ending up in tears as such. Because I'm not saying Canelo wasn't dropped. Canelo wasn't really stumbled. But that was, in my opinion, to do with the fact that Bivol was too conservative. Which is a key thing. In my pre-fight build-up, I said, one of the key things tonight for Bivol to win would be taking risks. Now, to be fair to him, he definitely took more risks than I expected. He came forward with some combinations a few times. In fact, he pretty much did what I thought he pretty much did what I said he would do to win, which was that stinging jab. And to be fair, I've watched Bivol's fights before. This was the hardest jab I've seen Bivol throw. His jab was spiteful, and you can see it on Canelo's face. Bivol wasn't throwing a jab versus Craig Richards like that. The jab was still, he weren't really bothered. Bivol proved tonight his greatness. He came out and upped his level. Everything was sharper. His defense was sharper. We didn't see Bivol take a clean shot all night. When was the last time we saw Canelo backed up and not hit someone clean with a big power shot all night? You ain't seen that. Yeah? There's levels, not only levels to the game. There's big man's a big man. So, Canelo's greatness hasn't really changed because of this. But, like I said, he found his level. He need to humble himself, because we can all be macho. Oh, I'm going to go in there and jump into the rematch. That don't prove nothing. What will be great for Canelo now will be going back down and making sure it's all clear. Just start wiping through dudes at 168, having a go on them all. And focus on the quality of the wins. Yeah, there's no reason Canelo can't say, you know what, I'm going to go to 168 and I'm going to knock all these guys out within 8 rounds. That should be the goal now. All this moving up weights. Don't get me wrong. I was the one saying I think Canelo should go up to heavyweight and knock out Usyk. But with now, I was wrong on there. Size clearly matters. But there was a time, don't forget, Canelo was moving up, and I guess he only moved at one weight division, but it was what he was doing. He was stopping people at 168. Callum Smith, who looked like a world beater, who was a big 168, got his cherry popped. Well, no, to be fair, he didn't get stopped, but he looked useless in that fight. Caleb Plant, who looked alright, got stopped. So yeah, 168 is where he needs to be. And on the criticisms from Bivol about Canelo's loads up too much, that's not going to change now, I don't think. Canelo's found his best form. Canelo, bear in mind, he's the smaller fighter. Canelo, being a smaller fighter, you're always going to have to put your high guard up and press forward. That's for sure. Now, Bivol's criticism of Canelo, that he needs to put more volume in, that's all well and good. But Bivol was the bigger guy, if you get what I'm saying. Bivol, of course, is going to be jabbing and putting more combinations together. That's what you do as the bigger man. Most times as the bigger man, you're not going to be stepping in with big, heavy single shots. Touch, 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 touch. Why am I telling you that? Well, Bivol telling Canelo, well, listen, Canelo ran out of gas because he was loading up, and Canelo maybe shouldn't load up so much and whatever else. I think it'd be worse. I think if Canelo had gone in there tonight with Bivol, yeah, and tried to do... I mean, you don't get the free things you do when you're big. When you're big, you almost get a jab for free, if you get what I'm saying. Establishing a jab when you're bigger and taller, that almost comes as a given. When you're smaller, I mean, Canelo tried to jab a few times. And again, at smaller weights, Canelo's jab, he was arguably out jabbing Caleb Plant or whatever. But this is just a step too far. There's not, in my opinion, maybe, listen, fair enough. If Canelo comes in and rematches Bivol and proves us all wrong and does something magical, then listen, his legend will only grow. Maybe that's what he's chasing, but in my professional opinion, we've seen the limit now. We've seen the limit. And in my opinion, only gonna end in tears. It really is. I don't see the room for growth from Canelo's point of view. What's he gonna do? Let's be real now, what's he gonna do? He ain't gonna become better at what he's doing. I guess you could argue, well, maybe, and that's the thing, Canelo isn't out of shape. It's not like what we can sit here and say, well, he wasn't training. Canelo was a gym rat. Canelo criticises other people about not being in the gym, so we know it's not that. We know it's not dedication. But yet still, he was out of gas out after a round. So what's going to change there? Unless Canelo's going to suddenly find an extra... Unless Canelo is able... let's be real now. If Alvarez was able to do what he did for the first 30 seconds of every round for 3 minutes, then I guess that might be an argument there, if you get what I'm saying. If you watch all of the rounds, yeah, the first 30 seconds, especially in the last half of the fight, Alvarez will come out explosive and on it. But he'd need to do that for a 3-minute round. That's the thing. At this level, you have to. That's what's expected of you. Maybe not being busy for the full 3 minutes, but at least if you broke up a 3-minute fight, yeah, into 30-second segments, you need to be busy for at least 3 or 4 of them. Especially to. But then I guess you could argue, well, YB, he won. He only lost by 2 rounds, and that's another point. Maybe is Alvarez's strategy, well, I only lost by 2 rounds, so I've only got to find 2 or 3 rounds in the next fight. That's a possibility. But I'm talking about really winning. We all know Alvarez didn't lose by 2 rounds tonight. That's not what happened. I'm talking in pure terms. In pure terms, there's too much to be done here. Yeah? And I think from a fan point of view and from a legacy point of view, everyone will be better served with Alvarez focusing on what he can truly stamp himself out at. Going up there and having, I guess, yeah, people want to see devastating wins. People don't want to watch Alvarez. I mean, look at the crowd. The Mexican crowd was silent for the last few rounds. You could hear a pin drop. People want to watch their man be devastating and dominate and pop cherries. And that's where you can, if you want to, I'd rather Canelo focus on. There's different ways you can be great. You can be great by going up and having hard fights and whatever, or you can be great by fighting the people your own size and doing them in quick. I'd rather him focus on the quality. You know what, I'm not going to run up. What's the point going up to 175 and having a whole bunch of wars when you can stay at your weight and knock people out within 3 or 4 rounds? You understand? That's what you should focus on. Focus on being more explosive at your weight. Because I think he can do proper job on these people his own size. I don't see nothing but proper hard work, and I mean, from a fan's point of view, well, again, I'm telling you what the fans want to see. The fans don't want to see the Bivol rematch. They don't. I'd rather go and watch him dominate Golovkin, truth be known. But if he somehow magically pulls something out of the bag in the rematch, maybe I'll be saying something different. But I'd love to know you, man, in the comments. What do you see Where do you see the growth? What's he suddenly gonna do? What's Alvarez suddenly gonna do in a rematch that's gonna flip this around? We didn't see Bivol rocked once. Bivol was in there pretty early in the fight, just standing toe to toe with his guard up. And even then, I remember, watching Golovkin. In both and certainly the first fight, I remember seeing Golovkin standing toe to toe with Alvarez, and it was back and forth. You understand? It was back and forth. Both men got tired. Both men were just hammering away. Tonight, though, Bivol was standing there and the shots were just bouncing off. Yes, Alvarez's shots looked nasty, but they was bounced off, and it didn't deter him. It really looked like, I'm not going to disrespect Alvarez, but to some extent, looking at Bivol, it almost looked like a bit of a sparring match for him. And this shows how important weight is. Even I've seen Bivol be a bit more concerned with people his own weights that are a lot less better than Alvarez, if you get what I'm saying. I've seen Bivol somewhat having a trickier night to some extent with people his own size, if you get what I'm saying. Now, I remember years ago, when Golovkin fought Kell Brook. Kell Brook was arguably a great 147 pounder. He did something similar to Alvarez. He went up to 160, and Triple G came out and said, listen, he just ain't big enough. Now, I'm not saying, Kell Brook went up 13 pounds. Alvarez probably went up, 175? Alvarez really is probably a 165 pounder, so Alvarez went up 10 pounds. And Alvarez is obviously a lot greater than Kell Brook, but it's the same principle. Anyway, it's one of them ones. You know them ones where someone great loses, you feel a bit, your head's all over the place kind of thing. But this shows that for good quality fighters, for example, before the Dillian Whyte fight, Dillian Whyte had better odds. Before the fight, Dillian Whyte was 6-1. Bivol was like 8-1. I kid you not, Bivol was 8-1. Madness. Dillian bum-million Whyte at 6-1, 5-1 or something at the end. You gotta be having a laugh. Honestly, I don't know what people was watching. I think the problem is, a lot of people go based on the name. People had relatively heard of Dillian Whyte. No one heard of Bivol. Everyone thought, we ain't heard of him. I think a lot of Mexican fans, or fans in general, just thought this was another... What's that? Was it Yildirim? Alvarez fought someone called Yildirim and knocked him out in the first round. I think people do that. Casuals who don't know the sport, hear a name ain't heard of before, and just think, he a bum. Alvarez going to run through him. Can't believe it. Madness. Alvarez was not favourite, but Alvarez was almost tipped to knock Bivol out. Mad. But this is what's good. This is what it's nights like tonight that's good for the sport. No robbery, and everything in boxing made sense tonight. Yeah, the big man won. Alvarez is still great, and that's how it should be. I'm intrigued to see what Alvarez does from here. But like I said, bottom line, let's not be silly here, man. Just know your lane now. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. If Alvarez, I said before the fight, if Alvarez stops Bivol, that would have been, I would have been saying that was the greatest sporting performance in the history of the sport. If Alvarez had to stop Bivol tonight, that for me would have been the best boxing feat ever. Equally, when it goes the other way, you have to just know your place, man. Know your place. Yeah? No doubt. Alvarez is a great fighter, and his mentality as well is unrivaled. I mean, you look at a lot of these guys hanging around the place. Tank Davis, who he fighting? No one knows. Yeah? No one. Alvarez goes up in weight. His ambition is unrivaled. That said, his talent has found a peak now. And anything, I believe, any more of this weight business will be a gimmick, if you get what I'm saying. Alvarez will only be able to keep going up weights here if he's fighting people who ain't no good. That's what we've shown tonight. If you're fighting the best, or if you're fighting pound for pound or greats in your division, it ain't gonna work. So let's nip it in the bud now. There's nothing cool about going up and finding a belt somewhere. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure Alvarez can do that. I'm sure Alvarez can find someone at 175 or 200 pound maybe. And who knows? I'm not even sure now, to be honest. I'm not even sure if Alvarez could beat someone at 200 pounds. Full stop. Even Makabu, because of the weight. When you're just that big, I just think, again, there's levels. There's levels to it. Weight just matters. But it sounds silly saying it now out loud, but you get carried away, don't you? Oh, no. But anyway, let's see where it goes from here. Either way, because of Alvarez's greatness, because of his tenacity and his willpower, Alvarez's career is always interesting. Even when he loses, it's interesting. Because he's fighting the best. I mean, look at AJ, for example. When AJ loses, he fought... Yeah, I guess you can say to some extent he fought the best, but still. When a lot of these guys lose, yeah, they're losing to people who don't know one know. I mean, look at Teofimo Lopez, for example. Teofimo Lopez fought... Now, listen, Kambosos ain't no Bivol. Yeah? My point is, a lot of these guys, they pick these fights, and they lose anyway. Who was it the other day? Jared Hurd. I think it was Hurd and Charlo were supposed to fight. Oh, no, we'll fight later. And they both lose to random dudes you never heard of before. Alvarez, he fight the best, and when he loses, no problem. He lost to Mayweather, no problem. He lost to the best in the world. He lost to Bivol, no problem. Lost to the best in the world. People need to start taking note. Yeah? 100%. This man's truly a phenom. No doubt about it, 1,000,000%. And I'm really happy tonight. I've really got to say I am really happy for Bivol as well. Because no one thought he had a prayer. And his class tonight, he really rose to the occasion. A lot of people talk about the pressure. And even I, to be honest, didn't give him enough credit. Before the fight, I kind of poo-pooed it. Because before the fight, going based on his track record, yeah, I knew he was decent. I knew the fight was 50-50. But I just hadn't seen that. And to be fair, even in the fight, I still think he could have pushed more. I still think he need to, get comfortable. I'm not saying go in there in the first round and start swinging and being reckless, but in the last few rounds when you're in control, as he was in my opinion, he should have put the foot down. Because I actually think not a stoppage, but I think he could have probably ended up battering Canelo. If he'd wanted to. I just think he could have. Based on what I saw, I think if he'd wanted to put the hammer down, it could have been peak for Alvarez. There was a few times there when that Bivol jab was snapping, Alvarez looked a bit like, what's going on? He looked like he'd been big manned. Yeah? He looked like he's not panicking, but he looked, oops, I might be in trouble here kind of thing. And that's good to see. It's good to see. It's good to see great. You know what I'm saying? It's good to see that no matter how great you are, sometimes you just get topped. And who saw that coming? Who saw Alvarez spending the whole night on the ropes? I didn't. I'd have bet good money that ain't happen. Even if Bivol had won, I didn't expect Alvarez to be top like that. So, listen, great night. Fair play to Bivol. He a true competitor. Although to be fair, he was the bigger man. That's the. We'll know how great Bivol is when he fights Beterbiev. But the Beterbiev fight ain't going to be nowhere as big and have no more whereas pressure as the Alvarez fight. Although a lot of time pressure can be individual, as in the pressure of the event's one thing, but going in there with a man who's smaller than you must be psychologically a lot easier than going in there with someone your own size. It just is. I mean, think of it even from a civilian's point of view. When you're fighting someone half your size, even if they're good at fighting, psychologically, I'd much rather. Who wants to go in there with a big dude? No one does. No one wants to do that. So anyway, Bivol, true champion, maintain his composure. And the last thing I'll touch on actually is who had the better win here, Mayweather or Bivol? I think. Bear in mind, I don't believe the Canelo who fought Floyd was the final form. I have to give it to Bivol. Although you can argue, well no, because Floyd has a different type of defense. His defense is kind of like, I'm going to be slippery, but Bivol was standing right in front of the guy. Bivol don't have massive head movement. He's just got super tight guard. His guard is probably one of the best guards in history of the game. Because Canelo didn't get, look at Bivol's face, not one mark on it. And he was in there all night. A1 guard, A1 footwork. And his footwork isn't super tricky like Lomachenko's. It's just he knows how he can step off. And for a bigger man, a lot of people, myself included, I was worried about Alvarez's relative speed. Alvarez has an explosive kind of leaping left hook. He can just kind of step in with it. But Bivol, despite being bigger and what might be perceived to be pondering, I said again to one of my dons before the fight, Bivol's got these like UFO feet where he can just kind of skeet in and skeet out, and that's what kind of made the difference. Alvarez really wasn't able to get them shots that he catches a lot of people with in the centre of the ring. And unless Bivol was at the ropes, Alvarez didn't land nothing, and even then it was all in the gloves and arms. So yeah, two greats, a 175 great against a 168 great, and them £7 seems to have made the difference. And who knows, even if Alvarez was 175 naturally, who knows? We don't know how much Bivol can take, because it's not like he even looked a little bit wobbled, was it? But yeah, cracking night. Your man will be cashing the coins, no doubt about it. And that's I should have put more coin on 100%. It must put coin on. These kind of events, these kind of giveaway fights, you just got to go in hard, because you ain't going to get 9-1 in a 50-50 fight very often. The fans get too gassed, but yeah, no doubt about it, 100%. Both men should be proud of themselves tonight. Truly great truly disciplined performance. Alvarez, can he work on his cardio? We don't know. Is he going to be able to? Who knows? I wouldn't have thought so. If you ain't fit, if you're training every day and you can't do 3 minutes, you can't do 3 minutes. I don't think Alvarez should try and change his way of fighting. I think his way of fighting is good for his own weight. All that Alvarez can do really to get better is somehow find a way to become more active at doing what he's doing. But I doubt it. Unless he's going to get on some juices. You know what I'm saying? One of them ones. No doubt about it, 100%. But Alvarez's chin is also A1 certified. Despite Bivol. In fact, Alvarez's chin and his power. Like I said at the start. Alvarez's one-punch power, A1. But Alvarez's chin, truly granite. I think probably one of the best chins in the game. And Bivol's chin, we don't even know how good it is. I think he got hit clean with one uppercut the whole night. Maybe not even that. Wow. Defense A.